everyone and welcome back to CitySpidey. This is Nikita Sharma. The first week of August is celebrated as Breastfeeding Week. While breastfeeding is an important element of the life of a newborn baby and a new mother, it's still a taboo when it comes to talk about it. To break several myths around breastfeeding and to understand it more closely, we have today with us Dr. Priyanka Khanna. She is a senior executive, lactation consultant and a physiotherapist. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much, Nikita, for having me here.
So, ma'am, my first question would be, what are the most common myths around breastfeeding according to you?
Okay, so there have been a lot of myths around breastfeeding, and these have been there since the time of our dadis and nanis, and every time I go into a patient's room or every time I meet my mother, there are family around her, who are giving advices which are not always right, and sometimes they're right. So the advices which are not right, we call them as myths of breastfeeding. And there's a very common myth, that my mothers, उनको कहा जाता है that उनकी मदर कहती हैं कि गीले बालों में फीड नहीं कराना. तो जब वो ऐसे कहते हैं गीले बालों में फीड नहीं कराना, उनका कहने का मतलब होता है बच्चे को कोल्ड हो जाएगा. बट दिस इज़ अ बिग टाइम मिथ कि ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है, क्योंकि ये समझना ज़रूरी है कि मदर्स मिल्क बनता कैसे है, हाउ ह्यूमन मिल्क इज़ फॉर्म्ड एंड इट इज़ फॉर्म्ड थ्रू हॉर्मोन्स. तो ये जो हॉर्मोन्स होते हैं, ये जब एक मदर हमारी प्रेग्नेंट होती हैं, ये ऑलरेडी उनके ब्रेस्ट में ये मिल्क बनने का प्रोसेस स्टार्ट हो जाता है, और ये जो हार्मोन्स हैं ये हमारे ब्रेन से रिलीज होते हैं. सो इट इज़ नथिंग टू डू विद द स्किन और विद द हेयर और विद मदर गेटिंग अफेक्टेड. इट इज़ जस्ट दैट कि जब कहते हैं कि गीले बालों में फीड नहीं कराना, तो हो सकता है कि मदर कोल्ड कैच कर ले, जिसके कारण वो अनहेल्दी हो और वो फीड ना करा पाए. दैट इज़ ओके कि अगर आप मदर के लिए केयर कर रहे हैं, बट ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर मदर गीले बालों में फीड कराएगी तो बच्चे को कोल्ड हो जाएगा, बिकॉज इट हैज़ नथिंग टू डू विद द hair.
With the hair.
Yeah. So milk is formed through hormones, which is usually from the brain.
Right.
Yeah. And then second very common myth is that आप कुछ भी गैसी मत खाइए, जैसे छोले मत खाओ, राजमा मत खाओ, क्योंकि अगर आप ये सब खाओगे तो आप बच्चे को गैस बन जाएगी. सो दिस इज़ अगेन अ मिथ कि खाने पीने का असर होता है बच्चे की जो मदर की मिल्क पे है, बट बहुत ही ट्रेसेस में, क्योंकि जो भी मदर के ब्लड में जाता है वो, जैसे कि मेडिसिन, अल्कोहल, वो मिल्क को अफेक्ट करता है. एंड फूड बहुत ही कम क्वांटिटी में मिल्क को अफेक्ट करता है, अनलेस मदर को किसी तरीके की एलर्जी है. तो अगर मदर पहले ही प्रेगनेंसी के टाइम पे गैस्ट्राइटिस नहीं होता था उनको, एंड उनको कंफर्टेबल है, तो थोड़ा थोड़ा वो सब कुछ खा सकती है. अगर खाने के बाद उनको लगता है कि बच्चा बहुत फसी हो रहा है या कुछ इश्यूज हो रहे हैं, देन obviously she can make changes in her diet, but otherwise ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर मदर कुछ खाएगी तो उससे बच्चा बीमार पड़ जाएगा. तो ये एक अनदर मिथ है, बहुत कॉमन. देन एक बहुत बड़ा मिथ अगेन ये चीज़ है कि आप लेट के दूध मत पिलाओ. तो अगर हमारी मदर्स जितनी भी जिनके भी सिजेरियन होते हैं, ऑपरेशन से होते हैं, जिन्हें कहते हैं, so they all feed for the first 24 hours in the lying position only, right? So it's nothing linked with कि baby will get an ear infection if the mother is feeding in lying position. ऐसा नहीं है, मदर किसी भी पोजीशन में फीड करा सकती है. The only precaution she has to take is that she should not sleep over the baby, that the nose should be open, and she should, because breastfeeding leads to relaxation of the mother. तो जितना मदर ब्रेस्ट फीड कराती है, एक हार्मोन निकलता है ऑक्सीटोसिन, वो मदर को रिलैक्स करता है, जिसके कारण मदर को नींद आती है. तो बस ये है कि ब्रेस्ट के प्रेशर से बेबी का नोज ना प्रेस हो जाए, दैट इज़ द ओनली कंसर्न. और अगर इफ शी इज़ टेकिंग केयर ऑफ दैट, वो लेट के भी फीड करा सकती है, बैठ के भी, कोई कान नहीं बहता, कोई इन्फेक्शन नहीं होता बच्चे को. तो दिस इज़ अनदर मिथ.
I think those were very important myths to be burst. So now, ma'am, that we have talked about myths, I think we should also talk about some facts related to breastfeeding.
Yeah. So the way I told, basically ये 3 myths के facts तो मैंने बताए कि मदर लेट के भी फीड करा सकती हैं, बैठ के भी करा सकती हैं, जैसे मदर को कंफर्टेबल हो. Another important fact about breastfeeding is कि जो breast milk में आपके immunity है, जो भी milk को healthy बनाता है, it is the most healthy form of nutrition for the baby.
Right.
So even if you are giving some other form of milk to the baby which is really expensive, it is of no use for the baby, because it might fill the tummy of the baby, but it will not fill the soul of the baby and will not keep the baby healthy. So baby's digestive system, this is nature, it is made to digest only mother's milk, and it has all the immunity boosting agents which stay with the baby in long term.
Right.
So this is the best gift a mother can give to the baby, because it has antiviruses, it has anti-parasites, then it has antibacteria. So all the growth factors, everything is present in mother's milk, which is usually not present in any other form of milk. So say no to any other form of milk, and the more it is possible, like if it is possible, the mother should exclusively breastfeed for the first 6 months of life. Right? Because the baby's digestive system for the first 6 months is made to digest only mother's milk. And also the calories that the baby is getting from the mother's milk is enough for the first 6 months of life. So it is important that the mother should exclusively breastfeed, and in case if any of you or any of the mothers, if they are facing any issues in breastfeeding, they can always consult a lactation consultant and they can help you with the breastfeeding issues. Then other than that, a very important fact about breastfeeding is that it keeps the mother also healthy. So mothers who don't breastfeed, they are at a higher risk of getting breast cancer as compared to mothers who breastfeed. So basically breastfeeding reduces the risk of breast cancer in mothers.
Wow.
Yeah, and it also acts as a natural contraceptive. So because it's all the hormones, so till the time the baby is breastfeeding, the chances of mother getting pregnant are less. So this is another important fact. And also the mothers, everybody, they love losing weight. So breastfeeding, this is a fact that every day 550 calories of the mother are burnt if she's exclusively breastfeeding. So if you want to lose weight, again breastfeeding is the best way to lose the postpartum weight and the baby fat which you have gained during pregnancy. So these are the facts.
So now that we know how important breastfeeding is,
Yes.
There's a very common question around breastfeeding, which is like, how will a mother know if the milk supply is enough for the baby or not?
Yeah, so this is a very important question, because I, as a mother, I have a 5-year-old child, and every time, even I was, so if I was not a lactation consultant, my concern was also that, my baby is crying all the time, he's not getting satisfied with my milk, or at night time, the babies, they cry a lot, they are not getting satisfied with the milk. So see, crying and not getting satisfied are linked to a certain amount, but not entirely.
Right.
So when the baby cries, that doesn't mean that the baby is always hungry. So this is important to understand, that the baby cry has a lot of meaning to it. First, if the baby is crying, you have to check if the baby is crying for passing urine, because every time the baby will pass urine, or the baby will pass motion, or the baby wants to pass gas, the baby will cry.
Right.
Because crying is the only language that the baby has.
Babies.
Yes. And if the baby wants to be close to the mother's breast, he wants the mother's warmth, he will cry, he or she will cry. So basically every time, it's not necessary that the baby is crying due to hunger. Hunger is a very late feeding cue. Initially, if the baby is hungry, the baby will stretch the body, the baby will look for the breast from side to side. This is called rooting. That means the baby is getting hungry. But if the baby is crying, first check for the other reasons. If there is no reason and the baby is crying inconsolably, that and looking for the breast and crying and not being quiet, that means that baby is hungry. Then the mother should put the baby to feed, of course. But then the two most important factors that determine whether the baby is getting enough feed or not is, one is baby's weight gain, very important. Second, the immediate indicator would be baby's urine count, pee count. So that's why I ask all my mothers, they should put cotton nappies to the baby for the first few days of life, so that they are confident that they are making enough milk.
Right.
So milk, as I told you, is produced through hormones. These hormones are stimulated or released when the baby suckles onto the breast. So the more the baby suckles onto the breast, the more milk is produced, and when the mother stays happy. If the mother is not confident about her milk supply, she's sad all the time, I don't know if the baby is getting enough milk, then obviously the supply will go down.
Because of the stress.
Because of the stress. So you have to keep a check on the pee count of the baby. So for the first 5 days of baby's life, if the baby is passing urine for like the number according to the number of days, like if the baby is of 1 day old, then one diaper or one nappy should be wet in 24 hours. That means the baby is getting enough feed. If the baby is 2 days old, then we need 2 nappies. Then 3 days old, 3 nappies. 4 days old, 4 nappies. Now this will continue. ये चलता रहेगा सिर्फ 5 दिन तक. Post 5 days, the baby should pass urine for 6 times or more than that in 24 hours. That means the baby is getting enough feed. But if you are feeding the baby and the baby is not passing urine for like 6 to 8 hours, and you fed the baby for like 2 to 3 times and not passed urine for even one time, that means the baby is not getting enough feed, or if there is excessive weight loss. So these two factors determine. At home, the best way to check is, keep a check on the baby's urine. If the baby is passing urine, that means the baby is getting enough feed. And if still the baby is getting fussy, that doesn't mean the baby is hungry. So find out ways to calm the baby. You can keep the baby on your chest and give warmth of your skin. Sometimes the newborns, the newbies, they need is mother's love, because they have come from inside. So that's the way to check, if the baby is getting enough milk or not. So never judge your milk supply through breast pumps or any other form, or babies crying. Just check the baby's urine, and then you will be sure about it.
Sure. So our next very important question is that, because we are living in the times of COVID, and it's very common to get COVID positive. So if a mother is COVID positive, is she advised to breastfeed her baby, and what precautions should she take?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, because these days everybody, they think that it's COVID and the baby should be kept away from the mother, but no, we don't. WHO doesn't support this. WHO says that a mother should continue feeding the baby if she's suspected, or she is a diagnosed case of COVID. Then also she should continue feeding the baby. Only 3 things should be kept in mind. One is she should be wearing a mask while feeding the baby. 2 is she should wash her hands before taking the baby and like after giving the baby. 3, disinfect all the surfaces around her before and after feeding. So burping and all can be done by the family members, but if she's infected with COVID, then also she should continue to breastfeed if her health allows. And if her health doesn't allow, then she can always pump out the milk and someone else in the family can feed the baby. Because the antiviruses that are there, because her body is fighting with the COVID virus, so it will be producing antiviruses, that those can be passed to the baby through the breast milk. So breastfeeding should not be stopped at any circumstance. And if she's physically unwell to feed, then she should for sure pump out the milk, and if possible she can pump out the milk and someone else in the family can feed the baby.
So now that you have talked about pumping out the milk, it takes me to my next question, which is that breast pumps have become more popular lately, because the population of working mothers have increased. Women are going out, they don't have time to breastfeed the baby at home. But how does that affect the woman's health, the mother's health? The breastfeeding pumps, how healthy are they?
See, so breastfeeding pumps these days, they are very much helpful in helping the mother to express out the milk. But see, nothing can replace the baby.
Right.
So baby suckling, the kind of feelings and emotions the mothers they develop while breastfeeding, that doesn't come with the pump, because that's an artificial system of expressing the milk. Okay, so the touch that the mother is getting from the baby's skin, so the confidence, the love she's feeling, those hormones, so supply will obviously be more if the baby is feeding directly from the mother's breast. But pumping is also another alternative if the mother is not well, or if she has to go somewhere, she cannot take the baby along with her. So pumping can be through both the methods. One is manual expression, where she can use her hands to express out the milk, and she can use both manual pump or electric pump, whatever is her feasibility or whatever is available to her. so she can always pump out the milk. So pumping basically helps the mother to keep her breast healthy when she's not feeding.
Right.
So if she is not feeding, then obviously her breast will get engorged. It will get tight because the milk is not getting evacuated from the breast. So to evacuate, supposedly if she is not well or she has to go somewhere, she can always breastfeed, use the breast pump and express out the milk, and then give that milk to the baby through Katorian spoon. I will never suggest that you should never use bottles for the baby. If you have to give the express form of milk, then they can give it through Katorian spoon or some feeding cup, so that the baby does not have that nipple confusion and the baby continues to breastfeed.
Okay.
So always before using the pumps, sterilize whatever equipment you're using for the baby, and it has to be either feeding or pumping. Okay. And because the milk supply will be affected if she is not directly feeding and not pumping.
Right.
So affecting mother's health, see, those mothers who are not exclusively breastfeeding, they then the natural contraception thing that I told you, that will not work. And the supply, the pump, the milk supply that is coming in the pump, it will not be same what the baby is taking directly, because baby's suckling power is much more than pumping. So never judge. I always suggest my mothers, never judge your milk supply what you're getting in the pump. Okay, if you're getting only 30 ml or 50 ml in the pump, your breast is having much more, and when the baby will feed directly through the breast, the supply would be much more. So pumping is an alternative, but it should not be done on a regular basis, unless the baby is 6 months old. Post 6 months, if she has to join work, then she can obviously pump out and give the milk through Katorian spoon, because we start on complementary feeds also. The baby starts taking mashed foods. So then she can slowly, just pump and leave the milk at home. And that too, there are some storage guidelines of breast milk, which are important to follow. Like if she's pumping, then she should use a sterilized container. It has to be either glass container or steel container, and this can be stored at room temperature. Room temperature means 26 to 28, not 30, 35.
Right.
So at room temperature, this milk can stay up to 3 hours. In fridge, the lower part, at 15 degree or 20 degree, the milk can stay for like 24 hours. And in the freezer part, it can stay up to like 6 months. Then they have to take out the milk and thaw and then give it to the baby. So it's like that. So the pumping is not hazardous unless if she has some issues, she is going somewhere, she can always pump out and give it to the baby. So there's always a second option of pumping, which is good. At least the milk supply will be maintained and the baby will be getting mother's milk.
Right. This brings us to the end of our conversation. I would like to thank Dr. Priyanka for talking with us and educating our audience about breastfeeding. It was a pleasure to talk to you, ma'am.
Likewise, it was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. This was Nikita Sharma signing off.